One moment, Reginna was breathing through the pain, one hand on her belly, praying her son made it through the night. The next, a badge was in her face, then a hand, hard enough to snap her head sideways, then fingers wrapped around her wrist, dragging a woman 8 months pregnant across a hospital floor while nurses screamed and monitors flatlined in the room they wouldn't let her reach. He didn't call for a doctor, he called for backup. He wasn't trying to remove a disturbance, he was trying to erase a witness. He didn't see a mother in crisis, he saw a problem to be handled. He was wrong about all of it, because what he couldn't hear over the sound of his own authority was the call she'd already made, the one that was already answered, the one already walking through the front doors of that hospital with the stillness of a man who had spent 20 years making sure people like Jeremy Handson answered for exactly this. Only a cruel person will not want to see how justice is served in this story. What happened next will shake you to your core. Hit the subscribe button and drop where you're watching from. You cannot miss what Judge Core Mathan does when he walks through those doors. Let's begin our story. The fluorescent lights in the maternity wing of Crestview Medical Center never dimmed. Not at midnight, not at 2 in the morning. They stayed on, white, humming, indifferent, like something clinical had decided that darkness had no business in a place this clean. Reginna Core sat in the corridor outside room 412, her back pressed against the wall, one hand flat against the underside of her belly. Her OBGYN, Dr. Osei, had stepped out to pull her chart from the system, a 5-minute thing, he'd said, maybe less. The bracelet on Reginna's wrist caught the light when she shifted. Core, Reginna, DOB 0412, 1990, high risk. Room 412. She breathed the way he'd taught her, in through the nose, out slow. Her blood pressure had spiked at home, 168 over 112, and Core had driven 70 miles an hour through 3 yellow lights to get her ear. He'd kissed her forehead at the entrance, told her he'd park and be right behind her. She'd told him she was fine. She wasn't fine. She knew she wasn't fine. But she'd said it the way she always said things like that, cleanly, composed, her voice doing the work her body refused to do. That was when she heard the footsteps. Not the soft-soled shuffle of nursing shoes, something heavier, deliberate, the kind of walk that had learned somewhere along the way that it didn't have to hurry for anyone. Deputy Jeremy Handson rounded the corner with his thumbs hooked in his belt and his eyes already doing the thing they did, that slow, top-to-bottom assessment that wasn't really an assessment at all. It was a verdict dressed up as one. He looked at the bracelet. He looked at her belly. He looked at her face. And something in his expression settled, the way a man's face settles when the world has confirmed what he already believed. "Can I help you?" he said. He did not mean it as a question. 2 years ago, Reginna had sat in a different hospital corridor, in a different city, with a different bracelet on her wrist, and she had also said she was fine. She hadn't been fine then, either. She'd been 26 weeks pregnant, and she'd sat in that waiting room for 4 hours while the woman at the triage desk kept telling her that her pain was within normal range and that first-time mothers often over-monitored sensations. Reginna had shown her the blood. She had shown her twice. The second time she'd done it without crying because she'd understood by then that crying would only confirm something the woman had already decided about her. Her daughter had been born still at 3:47 in the morning. She had not named her out loud in a long time, but she carried the name the way you carry something that has no container, not in a box, not on a shelf, just in the body, always. This pregnancy, this son, was a different kind of love, the deliberate kind, the kind built from the wreckage of something irreplaceable, She had chosen every doctor, every specialist, every hospital with the precision of a woman who understood that the system did not forgive the same woman twice. Crestview was the best in the state. Osei was the best in the region. The room down the hall had her name on it. She had done everything right. She always did everything right. What Reginna Core had not yet learned, what the next 4 hours would teach her at a cost she hadn't budgeted for, was that doing everything right had never been the point. The point, the system's point, was whether the person looking at you decided to see it. Deputy Jeremy Handson was still standing over her. "I asked you a question," he said. His voice had that particular flatness to it, not loud, not aggressive in any way a camera would catch, just flat. The sound of a man who had asked questions like this before, in corridors like this one, and had never once been wrong about where they ended up. Reginna looked at him. Her hand was still against her belly. "I'm a patient, room 412. She did not say, "My husband is on his way." She did not say, "I have documentation." She said what was true, and she said it once, and she waited, the way she had always waited, for the world to catch up with the facts. It didn't.
Jeremy Handson had been assigned to Crestview Medical Center for 11 months. Before that, he'd done 4 years in the county's South Precinct. Before that, if you followed the paper trail far enough back, there were 2 transfers and a sealed personnel file that his lieutenant, Dale Briggs, had signed off on personally. Briggs and Handson had graduated from the same academy in the same year. They fished together on weekends. Their kids had played on the same Little League team. These were facts that would matter later. Right now, they were just wallpaper. Handson pulled out a notepad. Not a phone, an actual paper notepad, the kind that said, "I am generating a record, and you should be nervous about that." "Name," he said. "Reginna Core. It's on my bracelet. I'll need you to state it for me." She stated it. She kept her voice even. The fluorescent hum above them seemed to deepen, or maybe that was just what silence sounded like when it was waiting for something to go wrong. A nurse appeared at the far end of the corridor. Patricia Voss, 22 years at Crestview, charge nurse on the maternity floor, a woman who had seen nearly everything this building had to offer and had developed a very specific instinct for the things that preceded the things she'd rather not see again. She slowed. She did not approach yet, but she did not leave. "And what brings you to the VIP wing?" Handson said. The word VIP landed with a particular weight, the way a word can be used as a question and an accusation at the same time. Reginna felt her pressure behind her eyes. Not anger, not yet. Something older than anger. "My doctor admitted me, Dr. Osei. If you'd like to confirm." "I'm not asking about your doctor." Reginna had no idea how deep this went. Neither do you, yet. Drop your theory in the comments right now. Subscribe. You're going to need to be here for what comes next. She reached for her phone to call Core. Handson's hand moved to cover hers, not grabbing, just stopping. "I'm going to need you to stay calm." She had not raised her voice. She had not moved from where she was sitting. She was 8 months pregnant, and her blood pressure was 168/112, and a man she had never met was telling her to stay calm. Her phone was still in her hand. She dialed. Core Nathan answered on the second ring. "I'm almost at the entrance. You okay?" She started to say yes, started to say fine. The word rose in her throat the way it always did, automatic, smoothed down, ready for use. "No," she said instead. "Come to the 4th floor, now." Handson's jaw tightened. He reached for the phone. She pulled it back. "Do not touch my phone. Ma'am, do not touch my phone." Nurse Patricia Voss had moved closer now. She was 14 feet away, her own phone out,
angled low, not obviously recording, but recording. She had done this before. She had learned to do this after a patient named Marcus Webb, 53 years old, hypertensive, had been removed from this same corridor 18 months ago by this same officer and had filed a complaint that disappeared into Dale Briggs's desk drawer like it had never existed. Reginna didn't know about Marcus Webb. She didn't know about the woman before him, Denise Carter, postpartum, told her chest pain was anxiety. She didn't know that Jeremy Handson had a pattern, the way some men have a habit, casual, consistent, unexamined. What she knew was that her vision was going slightly white at the edges, that her heart was doing something irregular, that her son was pressing hard against her ribs, and she needed to be in that room 20 feet away, and this man was in the corridor between her and it. I need to get to my room. I am a high-risk patient. I am telling you this. I need you to move. Handson looked at her for a long moment. I need you to come with me to the security office. We'll sort this out down there. Something in her chest cracked. Not broke, not yet, but cracked. The fault line of a woman who has done everything right her entire life and is watching it not be enough. Again. She did not move. He took one step toward her. Dr. Osei appeared at the far end of the corridor with a tablet in his hand and the particular expression of a man who has just processed something that doesn't yet make sense. Deputy, his voice was careful, measured. This is my patient. She is admitted. I need her in that room. Handson turned. Something in his posture shifted, not retreat, not deference, just a momentary recalibration. Doctors complicated things in ways that civilians didn't. There's a question about authorization for this wing, Handson said. Her name is on the room. Dr. Osei turned the tablet toward him. Her intake forms were filed at 9:47 p.m. Her blood pressure on arrival was 168/112. Deputy, I need you to step aside. For one moment, 8 seconds, maybe 10, it seemed like it might be that simple, that the fact of the chart and the voice of the doctor and the evidence of the bracelet and the clarity of the situation might just be enough, that the world might work the way it was supposed to. Patricia watched from the doorway. Her phone was still recording. Her thumb didn't move. Handson looked at the tablet, looked at Reginna, looked back at the tablet. I still have questions, he said. Your questions, Dr. Osei said slowly, can wait until my patient is... I'm going to need you to step back, doctor. The temperature in the corridor did not change. The fluorescent lights kept humming. Nothing moved. And yet something shifted, the way a room shifts before a storm makes landfall, when the air pressure drops and the birds go quiet, and the world holds itself very still, as if bracing. Reginna reached for the wall to steady herself. Her phone buzzed. Core, calling back. Handson's hand came out, fast, decisive, the motion of a man who had decided, and knocked it from her grip. The screen cracked across the middle like a scar. I told you, he said, to stay calm. She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time, her jaw tight, her hand back against her belly, and she said, very quietly, very clearly, I am the calmest person in this hallway. He raised his hand. The sound of it was wrong. That was the thing people would remember later, not just what they saw, but the sound. Flat and sharp at once, the way a slap sounds in an empty corridor when every surface is tile and every wall is hard. Reginna's head turned with it. She did not fall. She did not cry out. Her hand went to her face the way a hand goes to something that is still processing what just happened, slow, almost questioning. Patricia Voss moved in 3 strides. She placed herself between Reginna and Handson. Her phone was up now, visible, no longer subtle. You all saw that, she said, not loudly, deliberately, to every person in that corridor, the orderly who had stopped at the far end, the junior nurse frozen in the doorway, the family who had stepped out of the room across the hall. You all saw that. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Handson's arm was still partially raised. His face was doing something complicated, the face of a man whose body had acted before his mind could weigh the consequences, and who was now watching the consequences arrive faster than his mind could process them. She was resisting. She was sitting against a wall, Patricia said. Her voice was flat, final, the tone of a woman who had been a witness before and learned that what a witness says in the first 60 seconds becomes the foundation everything else is built on. She was sitting against a wall, and you struck her. I have it on video from the beginning. Reginna stood at the edge of everything. One move. What would you do? Comment below. And if you're not subscribed, you're going to miss what they find on the other side of this door. Dr. Osei was already beside Reginna, one hand on her arm, guiding her toward the room 20 feet away that had always been hers, that always had her name on it. Handson took a step forward. She is not going anywhere until the elevator at the end of the hall opened. Core Nathan walked out. He was still in his dress shirt from the court session he'd left 3 hours ago. He had his phone in his hand. He took in the corridor, his wife's hand on her face, the cracked phone on the floor, Handson's raised arm that hadn't quite lowered yet, Patricia's camera, Dr. Osei's expression, and he went very, very still. That stillness was the most frightening thing Jeremy Handson had ever seen.
Core Nathan did not raise his voice. That was the thing that Jeremy Handson would replay for years. Not the phone calls, not the courtroom, not the day his badge was placed on a table and not returned to him. This moment, this quiet. He walked to his wife first. He cupped her face in both hands, looked at the red mark across her cheek, and he did something that no one in that corridor would ever quite forget. He breathed. One breath, long and controlled, the breath of a man putting something away, something he would deal with later, privately, in the only space where Core Nathan ever allowed himself to come apart. Then he turned. "My name is Core Nathan," he said. His voice was even. "I am a federal judge, District 7. That woman is my wife. She is a high-risk patient admitted to this facility at 9:47 p.m. He looked at Handson. He did not look away. "I am going to make 3 phone calls. You should stay where you are." He called the hospital's legal department first. He spoke for 40 seconds. He used words like preservation of evidence and security footage and prior incidents. That last phrase landing in the corridor like something heavy dropped from a height. Prior incidents. Handson's face went through 3 different things in the span of 2 seconds, because here was what Jeremy Handson had not known, could not have known, had never thought to ask. Core Nathan was not simply a judge. He was the judge who had, 14 months ago, presided over the federal civil rights case of a man named Marcus Webb, a man who had filed a complaint against a hospital security officer that had been buried by a supervising lieutenant named Dale Briggs. The case had been dismissed at the local level. The federal case was still open. The federal case that Core Nathan had recused himself from because he understood, before any of this, before tonight, that a judge who decides his own cases loses the war even when he wins the battle. He had recused himself. He had handed it to a colleague he trusted. He had kept the case alive. The second call was to the county DA. The third call was to the FBI Civil Rights Division. Patricia's phone was still recording. She hadn't moved. Handson was still in the corridor. He was alone in it in a way he had never been alone before.
Reginna delivered her son at 6:14 in the morning, 7 pounds 2 ounces. His cry was immediate and indignant, the cry of someone who had made up his mind about this world before he'd properly seen it. Dr. Osei placed him on Reginna's chest, and she put her hand, the one that had spent 8 months pressed against her belly in protection, in prayer, on the back of his head, and she was quiet for a very long time. Core sat beside her, his hand over hers. He did not say, "I told you we'd be okay." He had never been a man who said things that weren't true just because they were kind. He said, "He's here." That was enough. What happened in the following weeks moved with a speed that surprised people who didn't know how these things worked, and didn't surprise at all the people who did. The hospital security footage was preserved within the hour. Patricia's recording was submitted to 3 separate offices by morning. The FBI's Civil Rights Division opened a formal inquiry within 48 hours. Dale Briggs was placed on administrative leave on a Thursday. By the following Tuesday, the buried complaints, Marcus Webb, Denise Carter, a third man named Roy Simmons, whose name had never made it past Briggs's desk, were part of the federal record. The Handson badge was surrendered on a Wednesday afternoon. He placed it on a table in a room with 4 other people and was told he could leave. He left. Core Mathan sat in his home office the night the news broke and did not watch it. He had a brief to review for an unrelated case, a wrongful termination matter, a woman in Ohio who had been let go after requesting maternity leave, and he read it carefully, all 43 pages, the way he read everything, without shortcuts, without assumption. He had not allowed himself to be anywhere near the Handson case. He had not allowed his name to be attached to its outcomes, its filings, its hearings. His discipline in this had cost him something, the visceral satisfaction of being the one to close the door himself. He had made peace with that cost, mostly. He called Patricia Voss on a Friday evening and thanked her. She told him not to thank her. She told her she'd seen too many files disappear. He told her the files were out now. She said she knew. She said she was glad his wife was well. Reginna, in the next room, was nursing their son. She hadn't named him yet, not out loud, not officially. She'd been holding the name the way she held most things, carefully, privately, until she was certain it was safe to say.
6 weeks later, Reginna gave one interview. She sat in a chair by the window of their home, the afternoon light doing what afternoon light does in November, arriving sideways, golden, like it has somewhere else to be. Her son was in her arms. She had not brought notes. She had not rehearsed. The journalist, a woman, careful, who had covered civil rights cases for 11 years, asked Reginna what she wanted people to take away from what happened. Reginna was quiet for a moment, not the quiet of someone searching for words, the quiet of someone deciding which ones to use. "I spent a long time," she said, "believing that if I did everything right, the world would respond correctly. I had the bracelet, I had the room, I had the doctor, I had everything they said you needed." She looked down at her son. "And I almost let a man remove me from a hospital where I was dying because I was still trying to be composed enough to deserve the dignity I already had." She paused. "I don't believe that anymore," she said. The journalist asked if she had anything to say about Deputy Handson. Reginna looked out the window. The light moved. "He looked at me and decided," she said. "He didn't investigate. He didn't ask. He just looked and he decided. And I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of systems do that." She turned back. "I think what I want people to take away is the composure I was performing was never going to protect me. The only thing that changed that night was that power had to answer to power.
and I want to live in a world where that's not the only way." Her son stirred against her chest. She pressed her cheek to the top of his head. His name, she had decided, was Marcus, not after Marcus Webb specifically, though she knew that name now, knew what had been buried and what had been resurfaced. Just the name, just the weight of it, a name that had been overlooked and was now spoken. The camera caught her face in that moment, not smiling, not crying, something older than both. The look of a woman who had walked through something and come out carrying more than she went in with, and was still standing, and intended to keep standing, and had decided that her voice was not a risk to manage. It was the thing she'd been born with. The interview aired on a Tuesday. By Thursday, 3 state legislatures had introduced bills requiring independent review of hospital security misconduct complaints. None of that was Reginna's doing, exactly. All of it was. In room 412 at Crestview Medical Center, the corridor was quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed on, white, indifferent, ever present. A nurse walked through without stopping. A family came out of a room laughing softly at something small. The hallway looked like nothing had ever happened there, but something had happened there, and the people who needed to know it knew it, and some of them had children who would grow up knowing it, and some of those children would one day walk into a room where a decision was being made, a quiet one, a fast one, the kind built on a glance, and they would say, out loud, what Reginna Core had learned to say. No, look again. Reginna finally understood. Some things you survive don't leave marks on the outside. If this story stayed with you, you know what to do. Subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell us, did Reginna make the right choice staying silent as long as she did? Comment below.